Hello.
Always good to hang out with
West.
my dear friend Carinthia West. Let me get this in the right order. Photographer, actress, model.
Model, actress, journalist, photographer.
Okay, well, you're very modest about your achievements because you've had a very glamorous life.
Yes, I know. Everyone says that, and when you think about it, you're just living the life you lived, and you look back and go, "Oh, it wasn't bad, was it?"
Now, your main, I suppose, what I know you best for is those amazing photographs when you were hanging out in California in the 70s. And you always seem to be in the right place at the right time.
It's a really interesting thing. I'm asked when I do a talk or something, I'm always asked, how did you know all these people, i.e. famous actors, actresses, rock stars, whatever. And I always say to the young, that London at the time was a very small place. And once you had a job, I worked for Eric Idle in Rutland Weekend Television, was one of the Python offshoots, and I did work with John Hurt for the BBC and this and that. Your trust, you enter a sort of, I guess in a way, rarefied circle, which I didn't realise at the time. But I've always had friends from childhood, all totally wonderful people who haven't been famous. And I've kept every friend I've ever had. I think we're a tribe, we have almost a tribe that's worldwide. I've got friends in Guatemala and in Australia and wherever. We were very lucky then because there wasn't a social media suggestion that we should have to be possibly projecting all the time to show how fabulous our life was. It was just dead easy. So if I took a photograph of someone quite well known, I didn't have a phalanx of PR people all standing there going, right, sign this release form. It was all very casual.
And I suppose, given that you weren't perceived as a professional photographer as much as a friend,
right. Yeah.
You had license to just snap away.
Yeah, I absolutely right. And I took my camera everywhere I went. So when I was doing a job for example, David Bailey taking pictures of me for some big firm, I took pictures of him taking pictures of me. And, if I did a film set, there's a film called The Greek Tycoon, I took behind-the-scenes photographs of the extras and Jacqueline Bisset and whoever it was. And the other thing I think is really important to remember that in those days there was no instant digital. So, the negative would sit in my camera for weeks, months before I bothered to go and get it, printed. And so often I have a roll of film in a camera that has got, my mother and the cat in it, and Mick Jagger. So it's kind of like there's no sort of pretensions about it. Nobody, there wasn't any self-consciousness.
Yeah.
Oh yes, please. Oh look, yes please. Thank you. Thank you. This is on the YouTube bill, I hope.
Yeah, we're just going to see what Carinthia's daily routine is. Very decadent. So, did you have any particular camera, or I think you've used
Polaroids?
Polaroids?
I had a Canon EF and a Canon AE1. Still got them. Amazing. And when I have a show, for example, the American Museum and Gardens was a big show, and they displayed those cameras in a glass case. I would never have guessed that would happen. And then I graduated to one of those with the film canisters, that happened in the 90s, to Polaroid film. I never used Hasselblad or big cameras, big format cameras. I was sort of nervous of using those,
Were you?
I felt like those are for proper photographers,
You famously took that photograph of the pig at Battersea Power Station.
Yes, amazing.
That was used for the Pink Floyd album.
Incredibly lucky. I did not actually hasten to add the album cover, which was taken by Storm Thurgeson and Aubrey Powell, Hypnosis team, and they're obviously geniuses. But I was friends with them, friends with some of the Floyd, and I was basically told, if you want to see a pig flying over Battersea Power Station in 1976, you better get out of bed now because it's all happening, and it's very secret and hush hush. So I think we all went down to Battersea Power Station Nobody really knew what was happening. A great big blow-up pig was in the back of a transit van, and the next thing I knew, it was flying above the power station on a hawser, and so I had a roll of Tri-X film. That was it in my camera, and I took this roll of film, and about halfway through, the hawser snapped, and we all heard it go, and the pig started to fly up and then get caught in an air current and sort of hover over the Battersea Power Station. Meanwhile, everyone was panicking. The police was scrambled. You know, apparently there was a jumbo jet flying up the Thames at the time from Tokyo, and the captain said, you know, to the right of your plane is the Houses of Parliament, and to the left there is flying pig. So everybody rushed to that side of the plane. I'm told all these stories. They may be apocryphal or not. One doesn't know. But
you
anyway,
do seem to have been in the right place at the right time. I mean, some of those fabulous
yes,
photographs
it's really
of
odd.
the Stones, quite seminal now.
I think I had a capacity for friendship, and probably still do to a certain extent. I was lucky in that, you know, all sorts of friends from all sorts of walks of life. The pig pictures, just to finish on that, are going around the world in the exhibition of the Pink Floyd's. It's called Their Mortal Remains, and it's opened at the V&A in London, and it's been to Dortmund and to Munich, all sorts of different countries. I think it's in Montreal or somewhere at the moment. Yeah. Every now and again I get a release form where I get £1 for 7 photographs. Thanks a lot, David. Thanks, Nick. I never argue, because it's such a privilege to have my photographs chosen before the professional photographers that were on the set. So it's just amazing, really. That was a total fluke, you know.
Well, you say that, but clearly, you know, I think...
I wasn't ambitious for my photographs at all. I mean, I was actually more embarrassed. I didn't want anyone to think I'd used private relationships to further a career. And also I was acting, you know. I was been modelling, probably that was done by then, but I'd also become an editor at Marie Claire magazine and The Telegraph and Tatler and Harper's and Queen and Harper's Bazaar, and you know, I was being flown all over the world to interview famous people like Oprah Winfrey or whoever, and I partly lived in America too between that time, and I had a mum in London.
Well, you had a very interesting upbringing, because wasn't your father General West, who was the dancing general for John Kennedy?
Yes, he was the UK representative for NATO,
right?
And 1961 to 65. So we moved out. I'm an only child, so Mum and Dad didn't want me to sit in some dreary boarding school, and so I went with them to Washington DC, and I went to school there, made lots of friends there, and then of course we were there when JFK was killed, assassinated. So I can remember terribly well that awful day, and dragged out of school, and like everyone else we watched TV all day, heard the cathedral bells tolling, and we were all in shock because we adored him. I mean, we were all teen Democrats. And then not long after that, of course, Martin Luther King had the, well, maybe before, he had the rally in Washington DC, and we all attended that, and I heard Mahalia Jackson and all these amazing people sing, and I had a dream speech.
Well, you had to be in the right place at the right time again.
Yeah, running down the Mall, and I could pinpoint where I am. And come and join us, Daniel. Yeah.
Okay. We'll just take a quick break.
Doing a quick iPod.
Yes, I was just saying, Carinthia, you look great, but then you always do, and you're blaming it on the pink.
I am. Well, it helps not to be in a hospital brace for the last 3 months that I was in. Anyway, we're better now.
One thing I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
I remember the story about you, when you got into modelling, was it true that you were walking down the King's Road and someone spotted you?
Yeah, it was Bob Whitaker, a photographer, and Martin Sharp, who were hanging out at a bus stop in front of the Pheasantry. And I saw this guy, funnily enough, in a jacket just like this, sort of Afghani jacket. And it was a really cool looking guy, and that was Martin. and Bob was more conventionally dressed, as I remember. And I was with a friend called Angie from Queensgate. We were Queensgate girls, and it was afternoon, daylight. And so when they said, "Oh, you know, you look great," Bob said, "I'm a photographer and I'd like to photograph," you know, we didn't think, "Oh God, this is sinister." So we sort of said okay, and we went up to, because we were together, we felt solid, and we went up to the Pheasantry second, third floor where they shared a flat with, as we didn't know then, but found out later, Eric Clapton. And the Pheasantry, which is now a sort of pizza joint, was a really cool, huge amount of artist studios, different painters and photographers, and people like Anthony Hayden Guest had places there. I knew Anthony. And so we were just having tea. I think they gave us some tea. And Bob said, "I'd love to do some photographs of you." And I, of course, wanted to be a model. I was 16 or something.
Right.
But they felt the vibe was good. Neither of us felt threatened or anything. Anyway, the door opened, and in walked three gorgeous women. And it was Marianne Faithfull, and Anita Pallenberg, and another model, don't remember her name. And of course we suddenly felt like frumpy schoolgirls, you know, just completely overwhelmed by these icons of beauty that we'd heard about. And they were so nice to us, and they were so sweet. And then I think I had a joint, or both, and I think we were given a joint. It was the first joint I ever smoked. And when we left, which was about 2 or 3 hours later, I'm like absolutely high as a kite, not realising, you know, that I had to go home to mummy and act properly straight and everything like that. And kids are out of school.
So was that your introduction into the world of the Rolling Stones?
Not like that, no. I met them, Mick and Ronnie and all that, much later. But I actually was in the rock and rolls. Excuse me, sneezing. I was asked to be in the audience of the Rock and Roll Circus, 1968 film made by Michael Lindsay Hogg, and I went along with a whole bunch of friends, and so I saw it's on film a lot now. I saw it on TV the other night, and you know, saw lots of dust around here. John Lennon, Yoko Ono, The Who. We all went to the Science Studio in Wembley, I think it was. And so you can see me in the audience sitting next to Charlie Watts. We were all made to wear silly hats. Yeah. So I saw them. It must be cold. I saw them there, and that was 68. So, and I think the time I was picked up by Bob Whittaker and Martin was about the same time. I was still at school, and
you famously had, am I correct in saying you had 34-inch legs?
37 inside.
37?
That's why they were measured, yeah. 37 inside leg.
Right.
And and I was always going to school with my skirt down below my knees. The minute I knew I was out of sight of my mother looking out the window, we'd hike them up and pull the waistband up. And then as soon as we got off the tube at South Kensington with the tube down, they'd come again in case the teacher saw you. And then every Saturday down the King's Road, Guys and Dolls, Cardoma coffee shop, going to the little boutiques that were there, Granny Takes a Trip, Hung on You, all that. Such fun. You knew everyone in the King's Road then. It was great. Yeah. And the only risk you ran was running into your mother, which was a nightmare.
Well, did they approve of or disapprove of what you were getting involved with?
Yeah, I think my father was amused. I mean, like my head teacher, when I actually left, I was expelled from Queensgate. And
what were you expelled for?
Excuse me, do you mind if I just blow my nose? Well, the girl ahead of me and the form above me was someone called Twinkle, and her real name was Lynn Rickley. and she'd done a song that had gone on top of the pops. She sang, and it was called Terry. I don't think you'll remember it.
I do remember it.
You do?
I do.
And she was at Queensgate, and she got expelled for appearing on top of the pops and doing a song. So we all thought that was fabulous. So we started really being naughty, I think. And I used to wear a PVC jacket and Mary Quant tights and white lipstick. And then caught running in the halls. So you weren't expelled for any, I didn't smoke I didn't really do anything terrible, but I was much taller and I think picked on for that reason. And then I remember we had lacrosse, horrible. We had to go in a bus every Friday, I think it was, to Richmond athletic grounds, and the Stones were rehearsing in a little hut on those grounds, and we, the big cool thing was to be spotted by Rolling Stone, of course, and mind you, I wasn't, not till years later, and then we'd put a thing in the bus, we'd sit in the back of the bus and we'd kind of do a big sign with our telephone numbers on it and say, we're not really here, we don't really belong to this school, call us on. I mean, the amount of things you do when you're kind of naughty.
But then later you got into acting.
Yeah, I went to East 15 acting school, and that was an interesting thing. I don't think my parents really wanted me to do that. They thought I was brighter than that. But I really wanted to get I had a car crash with a boyfriend at 69, or 67 actually, 69. And by that time I thought, I don't want to do any more school. I've had enough of discipline. I just want to go and be myself. And I got into this acting school called East 15, which a lot of far more illuminated, like Alison Steadman went there.
Oh, she's great.
Oh, she's fabulous,
Yeah.
But I was nothing like as esteemed or celebrated or as good. And that was a kind of... And then I got expelled from that because we pointed out that the head teacher was having an affair with the art teacher and none of us were getting any tuition,
So they expelled you? That's a bit harsh.
Yeah, because my parents made a complaint about where were the fees going if,
Right.
It was all drama. And then I fell in love with a singer called Gary Farr and the T-Bones and went off with him to New York. And there I modelled, and we never had any money, completely broke, until he got a contract with Atlantic. Jerry Wexler picked him up, an Armored Ertigan, and suddenly we were in the money, and Gary was recording, and we went down to Muscle Shoals, and I met all those lovely musicians. It was an amazing period, actually, but I wasn't doing much other than being a girlfriend and hanging out, taking lots of pictures even then. And we were together about 5 years, and with a couple of intermissions, both of us.
Yeah. Well, you've probably had some interesting boyfriends.
Well, Nick Turner from Hawkwind put his foot in the
Right.
door and said, "You're mine, forget about him." And if Gary was being difficult at that time, you know what being young is like. You're fickle as hell.
I can remember.
Fickle. And
So looking back, what would you say were the qualities in a man that you found attractive?
intelligence and humour, definitely. Sense of humour and being bright. I really couldn't be with anyone just because they're good looking or, creative people are most interesting, of course. Because if you start laughing with someone, I think it's a huge beginning, Mick and I were always laughing. Always.
Well, he's a very clever guy, isn't he, Mick?
Oh, yeah, and we just felt like brother and sister right away. It was just on the same wavelength. That was great. Yeah. And I think, probably if he hadn't been so famous, we might have been together for much longer.
Yeah.
I never liked, it sounds odd because I've been around a lot of famous people, but my parents brought me up that everyone is the same.
Yeah.
Just as polite and kind to the person who works for you as you are to someone, and also they always had diplomatic, I met all those people, from Winston Churchill, Randolph Churchill. You know, I went to the White House and met Jackie Kennedy. You know, it was. I didn't feel any particular privilege. And looking back, I suppose I was, like being able to go to hear Martin Luther King talk. That was amazing. My best friend from those Washington days is still Queen Noor of Jordan, because she was a school friend in the same class, Lisa Hallaby.
Yeah.
So years and years later, and I was living in LA with a boyfriend who ran David Frost's company. He answered the phone, and he said, "There's someone who's calling herself the Queen of Norway on the telephone." What? And it turned out to be Noor getting back in touch with me. And then from then on, I went out to Jordan every August for her birthday and met. He was wonderful. King Hussein was an amazing, humble, kind man. I went with another friend. We walked over the Allenby Bridge. They arranged for us to go to Jerusalem, and I went to the West Bank. I saw the way the Palestinians were treated. Even then, it was distressing, by the young Israelis with guns, you know. And you just know that it's just not going to end well, which indeed it hasn't.
I did see something on TV that was amusing, and I think they'd set you up as a date with the then Prince Charles.
Oh yes, that's right. I went to dinner there. That's right, yes, no, I was set up, you're right. It was a small private dinner party given by someone called Richard King, Vivian King, his wife. They knew Prince Charles, and Prince Charles wanted to meet Barry Humphries. And Barry Humphries and his wife came, and saw an MP called Tom King, I think he was also called. So there were 6 of us, and I was blind date for Prince Charles, and it was lovely. We had a really nice dinner in the kitchen. I remember certain things he said, like as we sat down, he said, "Oh, I've never had supper in the kitchen before." I said, "Really, sir?" He said, "No, we ate in formal dining rooms." And I said, "Well, in your ancestors' days, you would have been, because everybody ate together in a Saxon hall, you know, with the dogs, and you were below the salt or above the salt with it." He said, "I hadn't thought of that. You're quite right." Anyway, we were having a great time, and at 11, we were told by our host that he would be leaving at 11:30 to catch the train up to Scotland, or to see his mother in Balmoral or somewhere. And so we were all primed, you know, you can't leave before he leaves, and then you can go. So 11:30 came and went, and 11:45 came, and the host began to look a bit anxious. So he leaned over to Prince Charles, and Prince Charles was having a great time, telling very funny stories and everything, and flirting lightly, I would say, not heavily. And the host said, "Sir, I think I ought to tell you, you know, your train is going." And Prince Charles, so sweet, he looked up at Richard and said, "Oh, don't worry, it waits for me." Because we never thought of that.
Yeah.
We just imagined train, you've got to leave at midnight, and that's it, you know. Of course it waits for him, you know, it was the royal train. So we were there till 2 in the morning, I think.
So you weren't close to becoming Queen Carinthia?
No, I wasn't, thankfully. No, I had friends who were, but I have to say, my mother always said the worst thing in the world she could think of was me marrying into the royal family. And she's right. I wouldn't be the right material. And I like Camilla, and I like Prince Charles, King Charles. And I like many people in that world, but I don't want to be unhappy in my much more sunny disposition.
I think talking about being in the right place, I seem to remember one of the first times I met you, you were selling your art collection at the Isle of Wight. And we were at the Chelsea Arts Club, and I think that was the day that David Bowie died. I know you were visibly upset, but it was announced that he had died.
Yes, it was terrible. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Nobody knew. Very few people knew he was so ill. Yes,
You were very good friends with him.
Very dear. Yeah, I loved him. He was such an intelligent, wonderful to talk to. I was very dear friends with his PA, and I think for some time before ex-girlfriend, but she was called Coco Schwab, still is, and she worked with David for years, and she and I were friends. We shared a flat in LA, and that's, I think, how I got to know David, because if Coco liked you, you were okay, you know, because there's a lot of paranoia in that world after John Lennon was killed. You know, a lot of people were mad and thought that because they were a fan, they knew the person intimately. And anyway, he was super bright. I wrote a story for New Art Examiner, weaving it around the things that he told me, but just making it imaginary rather. Because I remember everything when we talked about stuff. I went on a boat with them to Italy, and David had a girlfriend who was a dancer. He was before he married Iman, and after he divorced Angie, he had a very nice girlfriend who was a dancer. There were about 6 of us, and David's old friend George from art school, Coco, myself, and we went up and down the coast, Positano, Portofino, that area, Amalfi Coast, and we went to. Did we go to Gore Vidal's house then? Well, that might have been another occasion. I can't remember.
Your documentary film is soon to be finished, isn't it?
Let's hope. I haven't had that much to do with it. I'm sort of waiting on them finding the money to finish it, really.
And didn't Mick make an appearance?
He has, very kindly. It's a huge favour to me. He did an interview for it. So did Ronnie Wood, Angelica Houston, Helen Mirren.
Well, you're good friends with Helen Mirren, aren't you?
Yeah, we've shared flats and everything, yeah. I mean, like, a lot of life, you know, as you get older, and I'm geographically quite a long way from London, and they all have houses scattered all over the world. So when I see them, it's a great delight, and it's usually somewhere like London or dinner.
Well, you're always jet setting off, you know, London, Marrakesh. So
I was. I'm not sure I do that anymore.
That's why I have to grab you when I can down in Cornwall for a chat, which has been delightful.
I'm much quieter these days. I've got a dog.
Yes. And you're coming for supper on Sunday.
And I'm coming to supper
with our
on
mutual
Sunday.
Friend.
Yes.
Yes. Anyway, that will be fun.
I'm looking forward to that. We always have a good tease, don't we?
We do. We do. Okay. Be lucky.
Happy, yeah. I've run out of things to say now. I might come back with some more later.
I'm sure you will. I'll give you a few more glasses of wine on Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.